Hey everyone, back with another review, and this time I wanted to have a look at a sword that I actually wanted to make a video about for a while now, and that would be this here, Kvetun Sidesword number 2. Now, before we get to that though, just formalities out of the way, as per usual. So, first of all, I paid for this with my own money, and Kvetun was not aware that there was going to be a review of any sort. Then the general structure of the video will be the same as always, meaning after this here bit of formalities there will be my talking part where I go over the ordering process, handling, stats, things I've noticed, things I liked, etc. Stuff like that. Then there will be a picture with the stats, so you can just pause and look at that. Some more pictures after that, just so you know, different perspectives on how this looked fresh out of the box. Now I fence with it a bit, of course. And then there will also be a video with some fencing, so you can see it in motion. With the fencing video though, you always have to keep in mind that I'm not someone who studies sidesword, I just like fencing. So you can see it in motion, but if it looks kind of weird, it's probably rather on me than on the sword. Lastly, there will of course be timestamps down in the description, so should you want to jump around, you can, and feel free to do so. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, ordering process. That is where every sword journey starts after all, doesn't it? So the sidesword number 1 I ordered through a reseller. This one here I ordered directly from Kvetun. That was in March 2022. And that was a combined order of this sword here that I wanted, and then Ulrich got the Meyer rapier. It was fairly new when they made it. That was what he got. So 2 swords, and we got them as part of a deal where they offered a rebate for supporting the move out of Russia to Georgia. So we thought, hey, you know, 2 birds, 1 stone. We pay a little less and support something that we consider a good thing. Their initial estimation of when the sword would get to us, or when it would be done at least, that was May 2022, and that turned out to be a little optimistic, really. Several reasons for that, I guess. At least I can theorize to a degree. They got a lot of orders, I think, and that was also, everything had to be done during their move or after, and it wasn't the most easy thing. Still, the sword only got to me in February 2023, so it took nearly a year. And the most frustrating thing about it, or one of them, is that we know that the swords were in Germany at least twice before that. It is just that the German customs, that can be rather strict, didn't like the customs declaration that was attached to the packet, so they sent it right back to Georgia. Of course, immensely frustrating for Kvetun as well. They had to pay for it after all, just, you know, sending it again and again. But just, you know, speaking from just a customer perspective, also immensely frustrating for us as an experience. Also because Kvetun is a nice contact when you talk to them. I do appreciate them for that. The owner also is really nice to talk to, but the problem in that situation for us was that we had to chase for info. We weren't informed about when the sword was really done, you know, when they were sent or what the situation was. We always had to proactively chase for information on that. And again, when we talk to them, nice people, genuine, interested in their craft, but getting in touch, a bit suboptimal. Again, not the easiest situation that they were in, but yeah, that wasn't really optimal. When we got the swords though, the packaging was really nice. That was really good. They were individually wrapped, just tightly packed. Parts like the ends of the cross and the point were just extra wrapped in tape and cardboard, just to make sure that that couldn't stick out anywhere, and they were also heavily greased up. So there was no rust or anything. The grease was actually a bit of an annoyance to get off, but honestly, if I have to make a choice between maybe getting it with rust on it, because all sorts of things can happen during shipping, I have had some bad experiences, then I'd rather take the grease and just grumbling while trying to get it all off, really. So the packaging, that was good. when we got to it. So then, when we had the sword, what are we looking at here? Well, we are looking at a sword that is overall 110.5 centimeters long. Of that, 93 centimeters is the blade, and then we have a grip that is 10.5 centimeters about-ish long. The grip is 33 millimeters wide, and then it thins down to 19 millimeters, and it's pretty much consistently, if you remove the extra wrapping that I put around it, 16 millimeters thick. So it's, again, as far as I'm concerned, a very, very thin grip. Not the biggest problem, as I said in my review of the Sidesword number 1, I can just put extra wrapping around it, and then I'm fine with it. The cross is 24 centimeters across. Thickness of the material is about 5 millimeters, 6 depending on where you look at it, but that's kind of like the through line of the thickness, I would say. The ring has a depth of 43 millimeters or 4.3 centimeters. The rings in and of itself are big enough that you will be fine with most gloves. I'll get to that in a bit. The blade is 93 centimeters, as I said, and when it comes to taper, it starts at 25 millimeters, a bit thinner here where the rings are, widens out to about 3 centimeters, and then rather consistently goes down to 2 centimeters in width, and then 1 centimeter where the point is. Distal taper, it's 5 millimeters, that's pretty standard stock, and then again rather consistently goes down to 4 millimeters, and then 3 millimeters just before the point, and then you have a nominally thickened point. I mean, it is thickened, but a rather slim thickened point where it is 5 millimeters again. I fence with it as is, and it is fine, but depending on what you have as equipment, you might want to consider using a rubber tip or something. But as I used it and it was fine. It has a nice flex to it. It is not overly stiff, but it does feel good in the bind, which is important to me and how I fence with it. When you put it down on the body weight scale and apply pressure, the combined pressure of the weight of the blade of itself and the pressure you put into it is at about 5 kilograms. That's not the most exact measurement you can do, I know, but if you have any thought yourself, then that's at least something how you can judge it. It weighs in at 990 grams, and the point of balance is, if I remember correctly, it's 10.5 centimeters from the cross, not the ring. So, handling. Of course, always hard to really convey. I hope I actually don't mirror too much into the camera. It's rather sunny outside today. Handling. Hard to convey in a video, but when picking it up, I liked it. It doesn't feel like a brick. It feels like a nice and lively sword that does have some forward weight to it, which is something that I personally like. When you compare it to the Sidesword number 1, it is longer, it is heavier, it just feels more, it feels weightier in general. Where I mentioned with the Sidesword number 1, you can do a bit as you like with it. You don't really have to commit to a cut or to a thrust. That is something that you have to take more into consideration with this one. Here with the Sidesword number 2, you have to work with the sword, which, as I said, for me that is something that I actually really like. Picking between the two, both are fine, but personally I prefer the Sidesword number 2. I also just like the rather clean look of it. So, speaking of looks, several things I noticed, not only about the looks, but you know, that's a good starting point. Overall, I like the look a lot. It's a rather clean looking sword. I got the version without a knuckle bow just because I wanted something where I could really just switch between left and right. I like switching hands when fencing just to annoy my partners. Also, hey, extra stamina which is always nice. What I noticed though is when unpacking it, that the outside is fine, you know, nice and polished. The inside though, and I think I'll have to show photos for that probably, this will probably not focus, but the inside is really rough, like actual coarse when going over it with the finger, which to me is just like a bit of an odd contrast. I'm not quite sure why that is. It doesn't hamper function of the sword, it's just, I don't know, is it that much extra work to polish the inside as well? Not a huge problem, it's just something that I noticed and just found odd, curious, really. A thing that was a bit more of something I wasn't too much of a fan of was the grip binding. Now you can't see it here, but I'll show a picture. I got the cord wrap because I really like the cord wrap of my Maya Albion, and I wasn't too big a fan of the leather that they used for the Sidesword number 1, so I thought I'd go with something different this time. And when I unpacked it, unfortunately it was rather smooth and thin cord that they used, and it also didn't really cover all of the wood. You could actually see gaps. Not a problem for me personally, because I estimated that I needed to wrap it anyway, because I knew the grip was to be rather thin again. But if I would have wanted to keep it like that, I wouldn't have been the biggest fan of that. Another thing that was also a bit of a shame is that I mentioned in my review of the Sidesword number 1 that it had a rattle after a while, and that was a threaded construction, so I took it apart and I noticed that there was what felt like a bit too much clearance in it, just a bit too much wiggle room. Easy enough to fix if you know it. I just put material between it, just some tape wrapped around the tang, put it back together, and it was nice and tight again. Thing is, this one here, after not too much fencing with it, also developed a rattle, and this here is peened, so I couldn't take this apart. It is not easy to show on video really, but it was very noticeable in person. You could see the movement, you could hear the rattle, you could definitely feel it, and that for me is a problem because I cannot stand a wobbly, rattly hilt. That's just something that really is a pet peeve of mine. I can't deal with that. So I contacted Kvetun, and what they recommended doing was pouring glue into the hilt. Unfortunately, the glue I had wasn't, it was like a bit dried up, so I need to clean that up still. It's ugly looking at the moment, but that seems to have fixed it. Still, something where I personally would have to say, maybe something worth looking into. I know you need some tolerance for putting things together. They are like, it's a serial production after all, but I just can't stand rattling, especially when it's a peen construction and you can't really do anything against that other than, you know, pouring stuff into the grip, which is kind of a fiddly thing to do. So of that I really wasn't the biggest fan, I have to say. Other than that though, personally, as I said before, I like fencing with this sword. I like the dimensions of it, it feels nice. It, especially with the grip, sometimes when you have something with rings, they make the rings extra large, so even the biggest glove can fit in it. And that is something that I personally just feel just throws everything about the sword off, and they always look a bit odd. And this one here doesn't. I think it's actually really quite beautiful in its simplicity. And also it still manages to be big enough to actually be easy to use with bigger gloves. So, yeah, wrong side. For example, if you take the Thox, it's not a problem at all, just fits right in. Any kind of slimmer glove that you have, like for example motorcycle glove, which is probably still the glove I use most often, of course, fits right in. But also, you know, it's a smaller glove and it doesn't look too weird using the sword with that, which is nice. So that's not a problem. You can also make it work with something like the Infinity. Now with the Infinity it's a bit more work, because they are a bit big. You have to fumble a bit, basically. You have to put your finger in and then tilt your hand. That leaves this part here open, of course, but hey, that's a 5-finger glove and that basically will always happen. And that also works fine enough. I fenced with that and it's fine. So I like this sword, really, because it gives nice options for fencing with lighter gloves, fencing with heavier gloves. In general, from the blade material, it does have a nice bend to it. I like how it feels moving it around. There are some question marks I personally have when it comes to the, well, not necessarily the material, but the construction. Just because rattle, again, I've got 3 Kvetun swords and all have developed a rattle or cracking and creaking in the grip after a while. I hear good things about them and I haven't really heard that, so I don't know if I'm just overly or especially critical. Maybe, as I said, it is a pet peeve of mine, I know that, and it is something that you can fix, but I'd say if you are looking into getting a side sword from them or longsword, maybe do take into consideration what you can do should yours develop a rattle as well. Maybe get the threatened version so you can take it apart and fix it, or, you know, glue, things like that. Just something to keep in mind. Overall, I do like the sword. I would maybe go through a reseller if you're in Europe and not get stuff from them directly at the moment, just because sending swords out of Georgia seems to be a bit more tricky, and then that is taken care of. But overall, it is a sword that I like and that I will fence with more, and that I'm actually looking forward to fencing with more. So in that regard, still, thumbs up from me for it. I like it. Cheers!
Schwert geschnitten